far as upward mobility, we commit to those children for 12 years. Not 12 days, not 12 months, 12 years. So we've been running that program here in the local market for 6 years now. We have 7th graders in that program that started with us at the tail end of their kindergarten year. And that program has tremendous long-term life outcomes as far as staying out of the criminal justice system, graduating from college. We really hang out in this 0 to 18 space, starting even prenatal in some cases, of educating and supporting families before a child is born on how to parent, how to engage, how to communicate, how to support. Then up to the early childhood education space, where we run a what's considered here a 5-star early childhood education center that's heavily subsidized to give a good early childhood education experience to a child no matter what the socioeconomic status of their family is. And we just believe that's just foundational. Unfortunately, we talk about problems in community. The industry of early childhood education is at serious risk and has been. All you got to do is Google it.
All right, guys, welcome back to a brand new episode of the Hart Hustle Podcast. Now, I'm incredibly excited because I have Will Jones with me, who is the CEO of Thompson Child and Family Focus. Now, something that makes Will unique is he is the leader of an organization that is serving the community, but also he has an extensive history in the space, 30 plus years of working in this space, coming right out of college is what you said. And something that I think is really important to recognize is you said that you're just crossing or rounding third base of your career. And I know that sprint home is going to bring amazing opportunities to you, Will. So thank you so much for joining the show, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's humbling.
You know, today we're going to be talking about a lot of stuff. We're going to talk about your journey and the mission that kind of inspired you to take this long journey of 30 plus years in this space. We're going to talk about some of the challenges when it comes to being the CEO of a company that has to deal with reimbursement rates, right? Especially coming from government, Medicaid, grants, things like that. All of us are recognizing that reimbursement rates, unfortunately, are being cut in our communities. I want to hear how you're navigating that. We're going to talk about combating burnout and building resiliency in your team, especially in this world of instant gratification. Leading with mission is something I really want to talk about. And then last but not least, we're going to really kind of talk about how you guys are thinking about leveraging technology as an accelerator to kind of dive into today's conversation. But before we kind of get in there, I want to listen to what's kind of on the front of your mind in the world of Will these days? What's going on?
Great question. I'm concerned about I call it the world of work. I'm really concerned about the workforce because without the workforce, we can't impact community the way our mission calls us to impact community. So I'm just really concerned about all things people. Which is really part of our mission anyway, right? So all things people that need us, but also all things people that we need to serve the people in the community that need us. And that's been top of mind for probably the last 3 or 4 years. This gap between how many jobs in the world and how many people are available between the ages of 18 to 64 that can fill those roles. In our community where we do the bulk of our work, but not all of our work in the Charlotte market, how do we prepare and build a professional pipeline of the Latino population coming in and growing? And I think you're going to see that across the United States, quite frankly. There's data saying that in the next 6 years, 70% of all new employees in the Charlotte area will be Latino. So as a business leader, whether it be human services, not-for-profit, public, kind of becomes irrelevant for me. How am I preparing our mission to be able to tap into that influx of Latino professionals and people that want to get into our work? And then also, how do we remove barriers around people that really want to get into the work that we do? And a lot of what we're finding in research and conversation with a lot of Chamber of Commerce leadership and also university leaders is that dollars, the ability to pay for education, is a big barrier there. So we're kind of trying to get creative and innovative of how do we kind of create a fellows program where we can actually infuse and encourage people to take the next step and get that advanced degree that you may need to be a therapist, as an example. So everything and anything about people.
I mean, I totally understand that. I want to ask a little bit of a question as we rewind a little bit. Over the last 3 to 4 years, why has the focus really kind of been on people? Was there a catalyst? Was it the pandemic? What are you kind of thinking about from your position?
Well, I think as a leader, it's always been about people, right? So I think that's always been front and center. For us, it starts with leadership. The old John Maxwell quote: "Everything begins and ends with leadership." That's part of our kind of belief system and our mantra at Thompson. That if the leader's bad, everything else will be bad. So we have to really be intentional about hiring, developing, and teaching good leadership. So the people that they support will feel that good leadership, and really be more drawn to do the work that they do. So it starts there, but always have to be cognizant and focused on individuals that do the work that we do. It's difficult work. Depending on who you are, some people say, it's work that's really sticky. It's being in the muck, or even some people say it's being in the shit, right? So it's just really hard work. It's stressful work. And it's needed work, which is more paramount than anything else. It's needed in community right now more than ever.
Let's talk a little bit about the problem that Thompson in the community is facing, but also the problem that we're trying to solve as well, just so we can level set for the audience.
Yeah, as far as people,
as far as just like the overall organization, the challenge that we're facing in the community, the problem that we're trying to solve.
I think the biggest problem, if I were to categorize it in one thing, it's upward social mobility. It's Thompson exists for 140 years to not allow the zip code you're born into or you move into determine your future.
I mean, I think that there's a conversation that I'm having a lot on the podcast right now, which is the changes that we've seen in the recent, let's say 5 years, with the emergence and heavy adoption of things like social media, right? We've gone from being in a local community and we've gone into being in a global community. With how we can work virtually, how we can have these virtual connections. We've seen the expansion of our work, but also the opportunities that come with it. So when I think about being born in a specific zip code, there are huge studies that show that the zip code that you're born in has a huge determinant on your overall success in life, access to education, access to resources, access to support. And so when you talk about helping upward mobility, what are some of the big things that we're trying to accomplish through the work at Thompson? Is it access to services? Is it access to resources? What are we talking about?
Yes. It's all of the above, right? First and foremost, it's I want to be real clear. There's a lot of great organizations in the human services space. And I always like to be cognizant to say it's not just not-for-profits. It's for-profit human service organization, and it's government. It's public sector. Human service organizations, and no one organization can do it alone. So it's important that we collaborate and partner to impact community in the way we need to. But obviously, we really hang out in this 0 to 18 space, starting even prenatal in some cases, of educating and supporting families before a child is born on how to parent, how to engage, how to communicate, how to support. Then up to the early childhood education space, where we run what's considered here a 5-star early childhood education center that's heavily subsidized to give a good early childhood education experience to a child, no matter what the socioeconomic status of their family is. And we must believe that's just foundational. Unfortunately, we talk about problems in community. The industry of early childhood education is at serious risk and has been. All you got to do is Google it. Teachers, how they're compensated, how they're taken care of, how they're led, is driving them away from the work. So you have this again, it goes back to people. You have this teacher shortage, almost in every major community, definitely in urban areas. And if you don't have childcare, the child will struggle because they won't develop in ages and stages that they should to be successful. And then also just a functional need as a parent, a working parent. You need to have somebody that's responsible and to ensure your child is safe and being cared for while you actually go out and work. So that whole thing should be a concern for all of us. Without childcare, children are not going to develop the way they need to develop socially, emotionally, and educationally. And then parents that need to work are not going to be able to work. And in many cases, what will happen is, I don't have childcare. I have to work because I love you, but I'm going to have to leave you at home. And then what ends up happening, you have social services our Child Protective Services, depending on what state you live in, investigation on, because you had to go and work because you had no other alternative for your 3, 4, 5-year-old. So it's a recipe for disaster in a lot of ways. So that's one thing we do. We go up into the schools. We do mentoring in high-risk zip codes and schools. And we do something a little differently. We're part of a national network called Friends of the Children. It's actually a professional paid mentoring program, and we target children in elementary school. And here's the cool thing about this: as far as upward mobility, we commit to those children for 12 years. Not 12 days, not 12 months, 12 years. So we've been running that program here in the local market for 6 years now. We have 7th graders in that program that started with us at the tail end of their kindergarten year. And that program has tremendous long-term life outcomes as far as staying out of the criminal justice system, graduating from high school and moving on to college, not becoming a teen parent and those type of things. So we're really excited about that work. And then obviously a lot of the work that we're doing around mental health, both outpatient, in-home, and then inpatient residential mental health. So we're really hitting on a lot of things. In the Charlotte market, if you remember the Chetty study, 10 years ago, we were 50 out of 50 in urban cities and upper social mobility. They just redid that study. We're 38. So we moved up 12. Only 3 cities actually moved to improvement. Charlotte was one of them. Well, I'd like to believe the 25,000 people we impacted at Thompson in the last 7.5 years is part of that improvement. That being said, it's not good enough, and we all should be ashamed of ourselves and be figuring out what else we can do.
I mean, the reason why I love having this podcast is I get to take a deeper dive into the mind of leaders like you that truly represent the intersection of heart and hustle. When we're talking about impacting our community in all the different areas that we're doing, you are having such a tremendous impact that reaches beyond generations. I mean, if you think about that 12-year commitment to those individuals in those school systems, imagine the consistency and the reinforcement of continuous care that you are giving for these individuals that often we don't get from our home lives. Yeah. When I think about the social challenges that we face in society, I think it was in 2022, the Surgeon General of the United States came on television and said, the biggest challenge that we are facing in society today is not another pandemic, but it is isolation and loneliness. Yeah. Isolation and loneliness in I would say, estimated communities, Black, Brown, Latino, the list goes on. We talk about isolation because of the requirements of both of my family members to work in order for us to meet ends meet. Yeah. And when I think about my father's generation, a Black man, my mom is white, they grew up in 2 completely different cultural atmospheres because my father had 2 parents who were working incredibly hard, who were caught up in a system. Often family members went to jail, and he had to develop in different ways than my mom did. And when I think about all of our inner cities today and our underestimated communities, we need organizations and leaders like Will who are willing to step up and do the work that is so necessary for us to be able to meet these needs. Yeah. And it's just so incredible to be able to sit across the table from you, man, because I feel like in this world of instant gratification and social media, the good work that you and the team are doing is often not as praised as it should be.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. It's humbling.
I mean, it's I want to talk a little bit because this is a little bit of a contrarian thought. In our previous conversation today, you talked about the power of saying no. Now, being a nonprofit, often we think that our nonprofit organizations are saying yes to every opportunity that comes. But what is the dark side of saying yes to everything, and what is the power of no?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, a great question. I do think it's really important for not-for-profit leaders and not-for-profit boards to take inventory on their mission, first and foremost, and really aligning anything and everything to mission, vision, and values. And, that's a kind of a catchphrase thing, trifecta that comes out. But if you truly do that, when you make decisions, if you truly do try to align to those things, the decisions that you make will lend themselves in most cases to a no. Because it's important for the mission. I always say being on mission is important for an organization, and being on mission kind of gives you a sense that you're moving forward. You're going somewhere. And by saying no to things, it prevents you from running in place or running backwards. So a lot of times what we find is there is a expectation the moment a PACE or a government entity in particular, they actually believe a non-for-profit gives them the ability to say, hey, we're going to give you 75 cents on the dollar. And then philanthropy, which you guys have the ability to go out and raise dollars because of your non-for-profit status, that revenue source will make up the gap. Right. And I would say after 31 years in the space, that's false thinking. It's bad. That's bad methodology and bad modeling. It's say, we should expect a pay source to cover our cost. If I go into a restaurant and they're charging me $12 for a piece of pizza, as an example, and their cost is 13, their cost is maybe their cost is 12, maybe they're charging me cost break even. And I said, no, I'm going to give you 11. You're going to have to eat one. Well, what's going to end up happening is that business is going to shut down pretty quick. Well, the same thing happens.
Doesn't this idea kind of piss you off with all the time that you've spent in this space, with all the challenges that you're facing? Yeah. Very transparently, doesn't that get underneath your skin?
Yeah, I mean, it does, absolutely. But I think there's hope. This is why I go back to. I think we go back to leadership. The concept of saying no as a leader is just as important as saying no as an organization. So what you say yes to versus what you say no to becomes really important. And it's about your priorities in nature. And what are you going to say yes to that's going to help you move whatever it is you're trying to get done forward versus distract you from what it is you're getting accomplished. So I find a lot of times saying yes to bad deals or bad things that don't align to those mission, vision, and values of an organization become a major distraction for you and actually put you in a position to actually have to start walking backwards or running backwards instead of moving forward. And our methodology is that there's a cost of doing business. We expect for you to cover that cost. And then we use philanthropy to seed more of that business, but not to cover the cost of the business. And through that, we've been able to grow our impact about 19 to 22% year over year for the last 5 years.
I mean, let's talk about some of the numbers. In our previous conversation, you had talked about, you guys went from about, I want to say it was $5 or $7 million a year, right? Up to now, you guys are around $50 million a year in revenue.
Yep.
So do you think that you can attribute that to staying on mission, staying on focus, and saying no to those lady in the red dress that comes by as a distraction of what you guys could be doing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think 100%. I always say we grow on the no. And a lot of people, not even our board and even some of the people in the organization, because a lot of people say, man, you guys are growing really fast. We actually say no to probably about 80% of the opportunities that we have to do something else for community versus the 20% we actually say, yes, let's go forward and let's see if we can do something here. And then from a missional standpoint, you're thinking, well, if you're saying no to opportunity, impact community, that's a negative. Well, the problem is if we say yes to something that should be a no, we'll impact for a short period of time, but a long period of time, we will diminish our impact and actually diminish our mission. And we don't want to do that. And then you referenced earlier in the conversation, we also don't want to diminish our quality of care. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, it's like anything else. You pay for what you get what you pay for. And if you want a quality of care that's really good, you're going to have to pay a really good quality of care dollar. And somewhere down the line, people just think they're going to get the high quality of care and not pay for seasoned leaders, seasoned therapists, seasoned technology. Well, it doesn't work that way. No business operates in that way. So for us, it's important to stay a couple of things. Mission aligned. You mentioned mission creep earlier. And one of the things we do every year, we just did it. We kind of do this kind of mission versus margin analysis where we're looking to see, do we have any kind of low missional work that we're doing? Was there creep that we allowed to happen? Or did we start chasing a shiny penny because maybe there's a short-term dollar amount out there? Or did we stay true to who we are? And I'm happy to report that out of 21 to 22 different services, they're all identified as high mission.
I mean, what an accomplishment, man. I mean, just thinking about some of the practical business practices and best business practices that you deploy consistently resonate so deeply with me. One of the things that I often talk about in the business landscape is marketplace optimization. So I'm going to use this couple seconds to kind of talk about this. Marketplace optimization is if somebody is selling a service for $10, You have a competitor that comes in and says, we're going to do it for $9.50. And the next competitor says, we're going to do it for $9. And it's a literal race to the bottom. And what we think is we're going to provide services with a little bit more. We're going to provide a little bit more value. And that's how we're going to win customers. But that in itself is a recipe for disaster, because you're eating and corroding away the entire margin of the organization. And I love the fact that you're willing to say that if you want good services, if you want senior leadership, you're going to pay for those things. And I think we need to get back to that as a society, to recognize that to have good things, you have to pay good prices. And I feel like maybe there's a little bit of consumer behavior out there with Walmart and Amazon and everybody else who's always cutting prices that kind of misinforms our marketplaces and our communities about what it really takes to do a good job, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad that you shared that, because I can tell a quick story. But here's the problem with a Walmart. So, if you do any research on a Walmart, their margins are really low, really low. The problem is it's scaled.
Right.
So what ends up happening, you have smaller organizations, not-for-profits, undercutting the cost of things, but they don't have the scale to make up for that. And that's that. We really were working with an adjoining government entity outside of our state on a big project. We responded to something, and we priced it the way we knew we could do it well. And we were really shocked we didn't get the award. Well, we found out they gave the award to an organization that's about $2 million a year in revenue. We're 50. They've never done any work at that scale. The project was probably more than their whole budget. They gave it to them. Well, obviously, they underpriced what a quality care would look like. Didn't have any idea going into new systems and those type of things. Within a year, we got a call saying, "Hey, that's not working. Are you interested in having conversation?" So, I tell our team, stay disciplined. Our cost is our cost. There's a cost of doing business. We try to give you a fair cost. We're very transparent about what our cost is, so we can explain it all. We can take a little bit of a reduction on overhead, but we do expect for you to contribute to the mechanism and the machine of the mission. It's not the full amount, but it's a percentage that we can live with. And then we don't chase, right? We don't want to chase them. So if we're not your cup of tea today, maybe we'll be your cup of tea tomorrow. Before the pandemic, I was drinking lattes. After the pandemic, I'm drinking black coffee. So, we're here if you need us. Let us know how that works, and we wish you well. And intrinsically, we really do wish them well, because and that's been a learned behavior. If you're not careful, you can get so competitive where you take your eye off what's important for community. So we never want any partner organization, anybody that's working with at-risk populations to fail. So we really do wish them well. And if we can help down the line, we keep that door wide open. And sometimes they call us and we reintegrate back into those conversations. And sometimes we don't hear from them.
And that's a part of business, right? Yep. Standing on your beliefs, standing on your morals, recognizing what you can do well and staying in that lane is something that I feel like a lot of business leaders today deal with when it comes to times of pressure. I want to kind of switch gears, because you said something that was incredibly impactful for me a couple seconds ago. You talked about it all starts with leaders. In today's world, I think we've gotten away from the emphasis of leadership. Often in the marketplace of jobs and everything like that, a lot of people talk about this is no longer an employer's economy. This is an employee's economy, which is great. And I completely think that's true. But the other side of that is there are great leaders out there who are going to continue to set the tone and set the bar where we need to be successful. And I feel like you truly embody that. I want to kind of riff on the topic of why you lead with mission and the mission of why. Because that was something that you said in our previous conversation, because you spent a lot of time investing into leaders and building the next generation of your team. Why are you focusing on that as a leader, and where'd that emphasis come from?
Yeah, I think where the emphasis comes from is when you're not receiving good leadership, you feel all of it. And sometimes when you're receiving good leadership, you feel some of it, but you just don't feel it as much as you do the bad leadership. So there's, the data set, if you believe it. I think it was Marcus Buckingham, as people are either going to leave their leaders or they're going to leave their teammates. Well, last time I checked, the teammates were also being led by that leader. So the leader becomes really critical in that relationship. So that was just something when I got to Thompson in particular. I just believed inherently that we needed to have an intentional investment approach into leadership development, all the way for how we identify them, how we vet them, how we hire them, how we onboard them, how we teach them, and how we coach them. And through that, things will get better. If the leader gets better, everything will get better. We believe in that inherently. But I think it goes back to those who people leave. And most of us will tell you, most of all of us had. I interviewed somebody this morning. Tell me about something that you learned from a leader that you don't want to repeat, right? And just trying to get them to understand that. Well, inherently, you learn more about what not to do than to do in leadership. And I've been blessed to be part of bigger organizations that did a lot of investment. And I would even say all the way into my mid 40s, most of what I learned about leadership was wrong. Because most of what you learn through leadership is modeled and seen. It's not taught. And what I mean by that is most people that lead in human services, if you say, what formal leadership training have you received? Not all, but most would say none. I actually interviewed a candidate for a program director, which is a leader of leaders role, a couple of weeks ago, and I asked that question. The person had led in 3 companies and a leader of leaders in 1, had 0 formal leadership training. But yet we're putting them out there to lead other people, develop other people, be a conduit to the culture. And that's a recipe for disaster, and it's not their fault. It's the organization. So if we don't teach people how to lead the right way, aligned to our beliefs, aligned to our values, they're not going to be the best they can for those that they lead. And then the therapist, as an example, will struggle. And then, well, through their struggle, who is going to be the recipient of that bad leadership? It'll be the client and the customer. So it's amazing just to feel. Have you ever been as a customer where you actually are getting the end results of bad leadership? Those are the greatest opportunities to learn as a leader. It's like, oh, I'm a customer and I'm feeling what bad leadership looks like as a customer. That actually is harder than as an employee.
And it has to be a little bit tougher as a leader, recognizing that there are ripple effects that go down the chain and reach your end customer. You know what I'm saying? This is an interesting concept to me because I've been talking about this a lot on the podcast, which is leadership in itself is a skill set. And we have to invest into it separately from the skill set that often our leaders come from. AKA, are you in sales? Are you in customer support? Are you in community services? Are you in peer support? Often we make the mistake of saying, you're the best salesman, as an example. Yep. Now you're going to become the leader of the sales team. But they've never been given the resources, nor have a organization took the intentionality to invest into the individual so they can actually become a good leader. How did you become such a good leader, Will?
Well, personally, I'm not a good leader. I'm a work in progress, right? So one of the things that we believe is that we always should be learning and growing. And I probably do more of it than anybody in our organization, predominantly because I probably need the most work. So I think that's important. Just kind of know your limitation, be self-aware. I think that what helps me in my leadership is the self-awareness that I have, that I'm not perfect, that I make mistakes, and when I make them, I own them. And I don't just own them internally to myself. It's not just self-talk. It's I own it, and I'm going to share with my team that I made this error and I have owned it. So I try to model in that way. So I think those type of things are really important from a leadership perspective. But again, is what we've done organizationally over the last 6 years is we went out and where a lot of people saying, don't take a Google approach to leadership development, it'll go bad. What we did is went out and found an organization, or several organizations, that's what they do. They train leaders as a business. So we bring them in to have them train us so we can be better leaders. And then once we kind of establish that foundation, now we're kind of creating a culture, a coaching culture. So now that you've been trained, we've trained you how to do this. Now let's coach you through doing it weekly. Through the most important meeting of the week, which is our one-on-ones with those that we lead. And then how are we talking to them about their challenges? And it's the fish analogy. If I'm just giving you fish every Friday for you to eat for the week, and the one Friday I show up and there's no fish, what do? You might starve because you don't even know what a fishing pole is. So what we're trying to do is teach people how to fish. So we want to give them the tools. Here's the rod, here's the hook, here's the bait, here's where you go. And then we want to start coaching. What kind of technique did you use to cast the line? What was your biggest challenge today? What are you doing about it? And we want to do that through questioning. Questioning allows them to participate in their own solutions and buy into them versus me telling them what to do, which isn't going to help them learn how to fish when I'm not there. And that's the approach we take.
The Arbinger Institute released a study at the beginning of 2024, and it was about the differences in mediocre and great companies this year. So the companies that are going to grow and flourish are going to be the organizations that have intentionality of giving resources and investment into their team members to help them grow to become the best leaders possible, AKA literally become the best version of themselves so they can then serve the organization and create results as a lagging indicator. I want to ask you an interesting question. Why do so many organizations and leaders today struggle with the idea of investing into their team members with a little bit of, how do I want to say this? It seems like there's a lot of leaders out there who are fearful of investing into their team members because they might leave the organization and do something else or become a competitor. And I think there's an amazing saying out there, which is train them so good that they can leave, but treat them so good that they won't.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Well, I agree with the saying. I think it's a hard time it's definitely a hard time for that to kind of play itself out. One thing I would go back to, and I do this a lot because I talk to a lot of my peers and say, hey, you should be doing this. The first thing they say is we can't afford to train our people, right? So, and here's the counter to that. You can't afford not to, right? So to your point in that quote, so you have to get your mindset right and understand that leadership development is not a luxury, it's a necessity. And until you do, you're going to struggle in so many different ways, shapes, and forms as a mission, as a company. It doesn't really matter what it is you do. So I think that's something that we hear a lot of. And there are, again, that mindset's so important. We believe in coaching trees. So if I grow you up and out and you become part of my coaching tree, that's awesome. It's my job to help people fulfill their goals. And one of the things I don't want to do is hold them down so much that they want to leave the work. So I care less about the walls of the mission and more about the walls of the work that we do. Classic example, a couple of years ago, and I've had this happen a couple of times, is a headhunter will call me and said, hey, there's this great opportunity to lead this not-for-profit in Georgia, as an example. Here's a good one in Atlanta. And I said, great. I said, tell me more about it. Tell me the comp, tell me the work, all this stuff. And I said, I'm not interested because I really love what I do, where I do it. But you know what? This person on my team really wants to be a CEO, an executive director of a not-for-profit. I think you should talk to this person. I think they'd be a good fit for that job. So the headhunter told me point blank, what's wrong with that person? What do you mean? Well, why are you recommending them if they're so good? Well, their goal is to do what I do, and I'm not leaving anytime soon, so I want to help them achieve their goal.
Recruiter says, I cannot compute what you just
said. Right, yeah.
And
I've had that happen a couple different times. And so I think it happens, and I want to be very clear, I think it happens in our organization. It doesn't happen with me. I think it's important as a leader. The first thing you do as a leader sometimes is because I'm demanding, I also have to be caring. I have to care about what their goals are, their aspirations, their dreams. And I need to help them work towards them. I had a leader years ago say, hey, I think I want to grow and do leadership consulting. And I said, great, let's figure out a way for within our work to help you get the skill sets you need to do that whenever you decide to do that. Right? Or the same person had an opportunity for a local CEO job, came up again, recommended again to a headhunter, went through it. Well, who helped him prepare? I helped him prepare for his interviews. Not because I wanted to see him leave the mission, it's because I wanted to see him fulfill his goals. So it's about building bridges, not burning them for me. And I don't get anxious about people leaving if they're moving on to bigger and better things. And I like to believe that I help them along the way. But sometimes, unfortunately, no matter what you do in this current state, I'll be honest with you. Again, it goes back to what's top of mind. We develop them, we train them, we love on them, we compensate them. We do a lot of different things, and not everybody's going to be happy. But you just got to wish them well. But here's what we find no matter what. And I said this earlier, most people leave their leaders or their teammates. And even in the recent departures that we've seen, if I go back to it and we have conversations, every leader that leaves their company, I try to break bread with, pick their brain, do a little bit of a skip level, learn from the experience, and get a sense of why they're leaving. And 99% of the time, it's something about their relationship with their current leader, their direct leader, not me, and or their teammates, or both. And it's never the organization. So people think people are leaving the organization. They're really not. I mean, actually, we love the organization. I have a lot of respect for your leadership. I have a lot of respect for this person's leadership. But this was a struggle for me on a continuous basis. And here, give me your phone number. I sent a happy birthday text to somebody who left 2 months ago because they didn't believe in their local leader. Now, for me, is okay, what do we need to do to get that leader better? Right? Not to get them gone, but to get them better because something went awry there. How do we improve that person? So those are really important things for us. You do have to try to love on your people, but to your point, there's a very similar to the purchaser of services going on. There's a lot of people overpaying people on the recruitment side of the way work gets done now too. And we have a comp philosophy at Thompson, and some people don't agree with it. The mission thrives because of it. But rule number one of our comp philosophy is we will never pay ourselves out of business. It's not that we don't want to outpay everybody else, but I don't want to ever pay ourselves out of business. Then the mission stops.
Yeah. There's an interesting conversation with nonprofit leaders that I love your perspective on, and it's about the dark side of the mission. So the dark side of the mission is burnout and resiliency issues. When we realize we're serving the community in such a pivotal way and we're helping others in so many fundamental factors, it's easy for team members to get burnt out. Yeah. So how do you balance the need for results with the well-being and resiliency of your team? How are you thinking about that?
Yeah, there's two things I want to hit on, and I think both of them are coming up. And I just want to hit on this one quickly, and then I want to get into your question. There's also there's going on about not-for-profit CEO burnout. So there's a CEO burnout, and then the people that are doing the difficult work burnout. And I'm not just diminishing the work that people like me are doing. But here is, I have not experienced burnout as a CEO of a not-for-profit at Thompson for 7.5 years. And I think it goes back to why I do what I do and my passion to do what I do. Do I get tired? Yes, I get tired. Do I need a vacation? Yes, I need a vacation. I don't believe in sabbaticals. I do believe in vacations with a family. I believe in going to the gym in the morning. I believe in taking care of myself, my physical health, my mental health, my spiritual health. CEO burnout, in my mind, is a misalignment of what you do, a misalignment of your why. The day I burn out's the day I resign. That's just me. I got to get that out there because I have a lot of thoughts on that, and there's things that I do to self-care. But yeah, this thing about burnout across the people that are doing the difficult work, and why it's difficult is most of us in human services, not all, but most, have our own adverse childhood experiences, our own trauma at certain levels, including myself. It's kind of why my calling is what it is. Now, I would say my story compared to other stories is very, very PG, but it's still trauma to say the least, right? So my parents got divorced. We lived in Europe. My dad was in the military. My dad decided to move back to the United States. They thought because of the experience opportunities in America that it would be better for me and my sister to come. At that point in time, I had a fractured relationship with my mother. And then I saw her 3 times between the time I was 7 till 18 until to the day at 51. We've had a relationship off and on, and we haven't spoken in 3 years. So that was a large part of my trauma, and where I saw supports, counseling, therapy, coaches help me along the way. And I just felt like that's part of my calling. But what we're seeing now is different in our work. So people are coming with their trauma, and sometimes it's unresolved, sometimes it's resolved. It led them to be in the work that we're doing, but it only takes one or two things to trigger that trauma within them. And they're starting to see that with the population that we're serving, because we are serving here at Thompson a very high acute, high ACEs population. And we're seeing more and more of that. Now, it is a balancing act, to your point. You don't want to do this work regardless of how it's impacting your workforce. So, we do there's some of the basics, and then there's some of the non-basics that we're doing to try to combat that. And we're not perfect in this at all. And I always want to state that. But first of all, we're trying to do a better job in the hiring process. So one of the things we're in the middle of doing is using some of our assessment tools to try to determine where they are with their emotional intelligence, their EQ, some of their personality, their ability to cope with stress. So that gives us some indicators of, do they have resilience? Are they searching it? Just because you've become a licensed therapist doesn't mean you really are resilient in nature. You still might have a lot of unresolved issues. So we're starting to embed that up on the front end. And it's not to negate or to dismiss or to rule out a candidate. It's to determine what kind of supports are we going to need to put in place if we hire Will and he takes the job. I think that's real important. So that's the one thing we're doing on the hiring. I think we're trying to beef up our supports. Again, it goes back to the coaching and one-on-one conversations that we're having. A big part of that is relationship and caring. There's serious data as a leader. If you care, you care. Not if you say you care, not if you just act like you care, but you actually have to care about the people you're leading, even if you don't like them. But if you care about them by checking in with them, asking them and understanding more about what's going on with their personal lives, you don't want to get too deep, but just surface level, what's going on? What can you do to support them through that? So that a lot of that happens through coaching. Connectivity is big in reference to self and caring for those that you need. Just checking in on your people. The data is tremendous on just checking in with your people on a regular basis and what that does to engagement and their ability to trust you and know that you care. So we're doing some of that. Obviously, we try to have a very healthy PTO policy, and we really want to encourage people to take that. We're not looking for you to stack up your PTO and then roll it over, use it or lose it, all the other things that are happening out there. It's there, and it's there for a reason. Use it. If you're feeling underwater, you're feeling stressed out, you think you're getting to a point, you're burnout, you're unhealthy, use that PTO. We also do VTO, probably one of the only not-for-profits that I'm aware of that actually encourages our people through voluntary time off programs to go out and do something different outside the mission and take a day, a quarter to go impact somebody else. And there's benefits. We know that there's health benefits to volunteering, right? Because we use that to recruit volunteers, but we also use that to get our people to volunteer. And now our mission leaves the building, and now it's an extension through this, but it also is good for health. We're trying to do more around wellness and self-care, depending on what level of the organization. We've done different things, gym memberships, pre-pandemic, some of the shiny objects we've done. But here's what I would say at the end of the day. If you really want to impact your people and care for them and prevent burnout, just care for them. Just care for them. It's a simple thing. It's simple to say, harder to do.
One of my favorite leaders right now in the space of business is a 31-year-old female CEO of a family office called acquisition.com. Her name is Layla Hermosi, and her biggest mission is trying to build a business that is highly successful. Right now, they have a portfolio of businesses that does like $500 million a year. So they're really doing well at a young age. But her philosophy is we can build an empire that is based on positive reinforcement instead of punishment. Yeah. And culture is built in all the little interactions. Me as a leader, I want to check in on my team. I want to see how Will's doing, which is amazing. And I love to hear you kind of echo that, because the culture that we build is literally a compilation of all the small interactions that we have by checking in on each other and making sure that we are serving ourselves before we serve others. Yeah. Now, something that you hit on, which I think you're very passionate about, is this non-for-profit CEO burnout. Okay. So it's really apparent to me that the world that we live in today often demonizes diving headfirst into mission because people talk about work-life balance.
Yeah.
I've been playing around with the concept a lot, which is work-life integration. What do you think about work-life integration?
I think that's exactly the way I frame the way I approach my work. So, I'm blessed to be living out my personal ministry and get paid for it, right? So for me, it's a blessing. This is what I think I was called to do. And if I bring it down to, we're just help people, to be helpful to people. So for me, I don't shut it off. I don't believe in 5 o'clock, shut it off. Now I need balance and I'm going to go and be dad and husband and friend and son or whatever you are. That's who I am throughout the day. I'm husband throughout the day, even when I'm working. Talked to my wife 3 times already today since I left the house. And I'm CEO and leader during nights and weekends. Now that doesn't mean I'm firing off emails, because to your point, that's not good for burnout and anxiety in the workplace and care. But I'm reading, I'm developing, I'm thinking, I'm vision casting. I'm taking notes, I'm journaling, whatever it is. I don't shut off the work I do because I just love the work I do. So for me, it is a true integration. But here's another thing with it on the burnout side, at least for those that I lead. If you have work-life balance and it's kind of a boxed model of what that looks like, it's an 8 to 5, and then you need to go get balance. Well, I encourage my people, if they need to see a trainer at 9 a.m., to go see the trainer. That's in the 8 to 5 window. There was a time pre-pandemic, if my people knew where I was at 3:30 every day, I'd pick up the phone, I would check emails, but I was at the gym. That was part of the integration. Your kid has first day of school is happening. Well, go do your thing. My son has a game, be at the game. It's important for people to show up well in that way. So if you think of work in that way, I think you're doing yourself a disservice. But there are plenty of people that they feel like they have to. I go back to, it's the ability to say no to things that aren't really moving your mission forward and your work forward versus yes. Because if you really took an inventory, and I just heard somebody, and we did something internally, it's like, what's your to-don't list? And start putting things on the to-don't list. Your to-do list gets a lot less filled, and then the ability to integrate and to have a healthy work environment just goes 5-10x. But you have to prioritize that. I agree with you 100%.
There's an idea that I've been messing around with. It's a framework that I heard on a podcast, and you're the first person who I've ever talked to about this publicly, so I hope this goes okay. There's an idea of energy takers and energy adders. An energy taker is having conversations where we feel like energy is being pulled out of us. Energy adders are the exercises like spending time with my family, being able to watch a movie, going to the gym at 3:30. I'm a huge believer. If we have balance between the energy takers and the energy adders, whatever that is for you, burnout is really difficult to come to because we have enough time to rest and recover. And I feel like we need to prioritize the energy adders, no matter what that means for you in your life, so you can show up as your best version of yourself and serve other people. What do you think about that concept?
Oh, I love it. John Gordon wrote a book called The Energy Bus. He calls them energy vampires, right? So they're taking your blood, dude. So yeah, I agree with that. I think you got to be really careful. Again, it goes back to the saying no concept. You even have to say no who you're going to give your time and energy to as a leader, as a person in the community. It doesn't matter who you are. It could be personal, it could be familial. But I would say in the workplace in particular, if we are doing a better job of setting parameters, protecting our calendars, saying no to the energy takers from that concept, and I agree with you, and then when you are spending time, spend time with the energy givers. I think that you show up so much better. I just think for me, I heard this the other day too. Most of my stuff I just clean it up and refurbish it, right, which is really cool. But if you ask your people or yourself, how committed are you to your mission on a scale of 1 to 10? Only the 10s change the world. So this leader said, I don't deal with 7s, 8s, and 9s. I only deal with 10s because they're the ones changing the world. How many of us are doing that versus spending a couple hours here and there with 6, 7s, and 8s? In our organization, we should be spending the most time with the people that are most committed. And I love that, right? So those are the energy givers.
Man, you just gave me the chills. I recently had a guest on the podcast. His name is Jason Yarusi. So big shout out to you, Jason. He is a large real estate guy, investor in the Tennessee area. And he has a concept called Live 100. And he talks about living 100 for everybody looks different. But when you give 100 in your relationships, in your personal fitness, in your finances, and how you handle your marriage or your kids' relationships or whatever, you can live an amazing life. And that's dependent on you. Yeah. But so many people today are walking around living at 91, 86, 75. Yeah. And you'll never truly understand the delta of living at 75 and that extra 25% to the 100% of you that could create the opportunities that will change your life. The relationships would change your life. And often we don't really recognize that delta until it's the end. And we're like, man, I could have been better. I could have lived 100. I could have taken more risk. I could have been a better person. I could have been a better leader. And we never think about those things while we're in the process. And I hear that you kind of emphasize that live 100 mentality as well. Super impressive.
Oh yeah. I mean, I just, most people aren't willing to do what I'm willing to do to move the mission forward. For me, it starts with a 2-hour morning routine before 8 o'clock, and that's for me to show up well as a husband and a father, and I always say, if you don't show up well at home, you're not going to show up well here. For me, it's super important. It's paramount as I rounded third, right? So I got maybe 6 to 8 more years, 6 maybe in the work environment outside of maybe consulting is the dream, I guess, and then who am I going to spend the most of my time with? My wife. So I'm investing in that. And that's important for me. And then because I invest in that, I can show up really well here. And that's important.
I want to riff on that for a second.
Sure.
Because often when we talk to amazing leaders like yourself, one thing that I recognize, and my girlfriend always says this as well, is there's often a support system behind them that makes all the difference. How is your support system with such a big mission and everything that you're accomplishing, and see that you have that tenacity and that grit in you? Yeah. Do you get the support from the wife and everybody else as well? Or has that been a process that you guys have grown together with?
Yeah. Like any relationship or marriage, first few years are different than that we're now getting ready to celebrate 18 together, 19 together, 18 married. But, I think first and foremost is my faith. My relationship with God is paramount in reference to support. And then it goes to my wife, and she was a social worker. We met in the work 19 years ago, and so she understands the difficulty of the work itself. And super supportive. I couldn't do anything I do without her and our relationship, knowing that relationship is secure, that I show up to be my best father to my 5 children. And then I can show up here. When you're on the plane and they say, put your mask on first, the first time I ever heard that, I was like, that sounds so strange. What if I'm next to my spouse or my kid and I wasn't even married or have a kid yet? But now I truly understand what that looks like, right? So you need to take care of yourself, and then you go to your support system, and they need to help take care of you. My wife leads me as much as I lead here, and a great sounding board for me. I'm human. I'm not perfect. I have a lot of thoughts and doubts about, and it could be coaching somebody at work. It could be a pain point at work. It could be a struggle at work. And what she does is help me kind of take a step back, give me some different vantage points and perspective. She really helps my caring side because she has a bigger heart. I think too is, for me, it's just a benefit. She's Latino. She's from Colombia. And so we kind of share multiple cultures in our home. And I think that's actually just made me just a better person to understand what differences look like when they're in your home and then you're in my life all the time. So that's been really big and really huge for me as well.
I mean, that's a beautiful story, man. And I love being able to dive a little bit into the personal side, because I think it's important to recognize that we all do need support. You know, as
Oh,
leaders of organizations, it's very isolating. It's very seldom sometimes that we get to lean into others or have people pick us up, because we're always the face that's leaning into others, right? It kind of goes back to what you mentioned a little earlier, and this is kind of where we'll kind of start wrapping up our episode here today, is the soft skill development, right? One of the things that I like talking about is what got us here is not going to get us there. And we've seen dramatic changes in the landscape of business and how we serve our communities over the last couple of years. I want to talk about curiosity in the vein of technology. So the years over since November of 2022 have been going crazy about the innovation of technology, things like AI. I see it everywhere. I'm not
yeah.
sure if that's my reticular activating system that's just picking up on stuff, or more people are talking about it. How are you thinking about the skill of curiosity when it comes to technology in the organization to help you guys do more with less?
Yeah, I think a couple of things I want to say about curiosity. It seems to be something that's come up in my day-to-day walk recently, and I think as a leader in my earlier times, even my early few years here, I think asking questions was not my go-to. It was really telling my story, sharing what I wanted, sharing all these other things. And I've learned over time to be a really good leader and a good partner, and to develop and maintain a network with other leaders and organizations. It starts with really learning more about them and having them tell you more about them than you telling yourself. So I think curiosity on a whole new level is a leadership art and science that's really beneficial. And I'm learning, that's something being added to my toolbox. Um, every interaction, I try to remind myself to be curious. But I think in reference to technology, and I think you said do more with less is huge right now. We talked about workforce. What does flattened organizations look like? I love Walmart knew all the data, right? So I say this as a joke, but not really. If you realize what happened in the pandemic, they knew what was coming with the workforce, because all of a sudden you go into a Walmart or a neighborhood center Walmart and you became the bagger and the cashier. They literally turned you into the worker. So they were really, somebody saw the writing on the wall and reviewed the data coming, the birth rate data on the workforce. But I think for us, it's challenging, to be frank. It's because of the type of work we do. We're doing some things using technology and AI on, how are you kind of scraping data off of your electronic health record, and how is it informing your treatment plan is a classic example of something that we're doing in that space. We think there's a big AI opportunity, obviously, for, sharing your brand, marketing, blogging, again, getting things out there on this new world, and the way we communicate via the internet and the phone. We think there's great AI application in leadership and leadership development. There's a lot of opportunity in AI leadership chatbots and things like that. So we're starting to ask a lot of questions. I think I would also say that we're cautious, on how much of that really is going to impact us over the short period of time. But here's one thing we know for sure is that, again, we talk a little bit about our beliefs. I didn't go through them all, but, in God we trust, all others bring data. Well, AI doesn't function without data. So that's part of our belief system. So if the data's good and we have good data and good informational data in, AI will be better for you. The analytics and the intelligence will be so much better for you. But I don't think there's going to be a day where you can replace a human in the work that we do with a machine. I'd be really careful and cautious about what that may or may not look like. I think that'll be well past my tenure in the work, but we're definitely curious about it. But I'm also a little cautious because there are times where, again, it's about that shiny object, and right now it's the shiny object. I get invited to an AI symposium or an AI information almost 5 times a day. We definitely, our technology leader is vetting and looking and recommending opportunities for us to dabble, test, pilot several different solutions, which I'm happy about. We have a young IT leader, younger. I want to be respectful. I mean, he's been around for a while, but he's a 10 on commitment and really could be doing other things with bigger companies, making more money, but he has a passion for what we do. And he's really reviewing and analyzing and asking a lot of questions about how AI could be used. We do need to figure out a way to be more efficient and effective in our work because go back to the conversation we talked about rates. Inflation's going up, technology's going up, salaries are going up, benefits are going up, everything's going up. The one thing that's not going up aligned to those increases, maybe a little bit, but not aligned to those increases, are the rates that we're getting. So how do you deal with that? You got to flatten, you got to learn how to do more with less, and you got to be more efficient and effective.
And I think I want to go back and hammer home your point from earlier, which is stay on mission as well. That shiny object, that lady in the red dress is always going to be a distraction, and we need to stay with that. I want to use the last couple seconds here to talk about what the future of Thompson looks like. What are we thinking over the next couple of years? What are we hoping for? What are we pushing for?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty simple. There's a biblical passage that says, without a vision, the people will perish. So here's our vision. Today, we're serving about 4,000 youth a year, $50 million in annual revenue, and we want to serve over 8,500 youth on any given year and $100 million in revenue. So that's the vision. How we get there now is the question. We know it'll be based on a foundation of leadership, challenging the status quo, innovating, testing, piloting, trying new things, stopping old things. So we're excited about the future. One of the things we're really kind of leaning into is rebrand and marketing, probably more than we've ever done. We're a 140-year-old organization that nobody knows about if you haven't been in the work, and that's not appropriate. Part of my legacy in 6 years of everybody, at least in the Charlotte market, knows who Thompson is, what Thompson does, and how well Thompson does it. I will be really, really happy if that's the case. We say this in Charlotte: the only thing outgrowing Thompson is the needs in the community.
Man, it has been such a pleasure, Will, to be able to host you and to be a part of sharing your story and the great work that you're doing, but also leading from the front as an amazing leader. I feel like is something that I'm incredibly happy to be a part of in this intersection of time. So I just want to thank you for everybody, who's tuning in today, watching and listening. Will Jones, seriously, man, can't thank you enough for being on the show. As we leave here today, I have a question that came from another one of our guests on the podcast. Now, this individual is a leader in higher education, and with that changing landscape as well, she has a simple question, but I'd love to hear your perspective. Sure. As a leader, how do you navigate moments of self-doubt, and what strategies do you use to ensure that it doesn't affect your decision-making or the confidence of your team?
Oof, that's a big question. You probably get a sense of that. You've interacted with me twice. I mean, I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed. For me, self-doubt's white noise. I combat self-doubt with my faith in my God, my faith in myself, my faith in my team. And I would be remiss. I'm around a team that's been here an average length of time of over 7 years in their seats. I have capable people around me, and I do a lot of self-talk, right? So all the messages that we tell ourselves, and you probably know the data, most of what we tell ourselves is negative. So reframing, being intentional about telling myself positive things, not false things, but positive things about who I am, who God made me to be, why I'm on this earth, the impact I'm having, and why I do what I do the way I do it. The self-doubt dissipates pretty quick. Some people say I'm intense. Some people say I'm cocky. I just believe I'm confident. For me, that comes with not hearing a lot of the white noise. Again, most people don't want to do and sacrifice what very few accomplish, but they love to pull you down into their space, and that's where that self-doubt comes. And you said it earlier, I think we got to be real careful about social media and what the world is saying about everything, maybe even including us. And for me, I'm just it goes back, and you said this a couple times, I'm so focused on my mission, I don't care what you think.
And that's a wrap.